Today we're looking at the WINWING Combat Ready and Takeoff panels, which were kindly provided to review. Like most WINWING products, some assembly is required, but fortunately all the required tools are included. The combat panel comes with mounting bracket, giving you the option to mount the takeoff panel side by side or stacked. Assembly and setup was a little fiddly, but fortunately it's not something you need to adjust often. For desktop use, they provided some sticky adhesive pads. Personally, I would have liked a solution that can be removed and returned on demand. Undoubtedly, the desk mount is going to be the preferred method as you can stack them. They have a reasonable range of motion to position them to your tastes and feel solid once tightened to your desk. They're best used with a throttle mounted below the panels rather than on your desk. If you're already rocking a WINWING Super Taurus, they, rather surprisingly, don't fit within the desk mount, blocking the throttle, requiring removal of the mount and using alternative means to support it if you wish to use them together. They look to be compatible with MonsterTech or Fox style mounts, and although not by design, you can just about fit them on a full-length Whirlpool desk mount. But it's not an ideal solution. In all cases, you'll have to be wary of clearance if you intend to mount them with a throttle too. So let's look a little closer at these panels. They're primarily based on the cockpit controls of an A-18c Hornet. However, if you're looking for an authentic recreation of a Hornet pit, you'll have to look elsewhere. These switches are a selection of the most used and important controls from across the whole cockpit, putting switches from all over onto the same panels. This makes it a little busy, but provides lots of functionality in a small package. Text labels are nicely printed without blemishes, it feels well built, and both panels come with beautiful backlighting and status lights, all with individual control, which seamlessly synchronize with DCS if you run their SimApp Pro software alongside. This means that common actions such as selective jettison, gear handle transition, or master mode all light up, mirroring your cockpit, which is just plain cool. There's also a dedicated control to control the panel backlighting. The lights kick in brighter than I would like at minimum brightness rather than fading like the in-game cockpit, but this is minor. Sadly, light sync is limited to just DCS. The combat panel offers you all the common combat switches like emergency jettison, master modes and arm, FLIR, laser, defensive system switches, and is very handy to have quick access to. It also incorporates utility switches like the heading, course, marrow, radar altimeter selection, radio and selective jettison station select, which is a little odd since it lacks the actual jettison selection knob, having been relegated to the takeoff panel. So to get the most out of this, you're going to need to buy both panels together. In the middle we've got two oddballs, the radar and INS knobs. These are useful for startup, but less so in combat. I'd personally like to have seen some RWR switches like offset mode and master caution included on this panel instead, but it's a great offering overall. The COM1 and 2 radio controls can be easily reconfigured to act as virtual axes if you prefer. In total you've got 56 inputs or 52 and 2 virtual axes to play with. Unfortunately, this means you will run into issues with older sims like BMS requiring you to program key presses to your switches to get around the input limit. Moving down to the takeoff panel, we've got everything we need for taxi and takeoff, and that missing selective jettison mode knob. The flap switch has a spade handle, although the landing light is missing a T-handle. Rather curiously, the parking brake switch is actually a mini stick with push. You can use this as either an axis or reconfigure it as a 5-way hat in the software. There's also 2 axis sliders with center detents, which I've personally not found much use for. They get in the way a little with the gear and hook controls when raised, which further deters me from using them. You can easily rebind these axes to function as a 3-position switch if you prefer. Wingfold is done via a small 3-position rotary knob with push, which works well as a compact handle replacement. Unfortunately, the cap on this switch is a little loose, and even after tightening it has a little play still, so I'm probably going to glue mine on. This is a general issue with the switch type, and WINWING are aware and actively trying to source a better supplier for them. All the switches on both panels have every position as an input, making control binding easy without the need for special programming. Although it should be mentioned that the SimApp Pro can provide you with complex programming options for your inputs if you desire. The switches in general feel good, and the remaining rotary switches are all solid, although a little small. The hook and gear have an appropriate feeling of heft to them, and the jettison switch is stiff enough to not be pressed by accident in most cases despite lacking a guard. And whilst you're not going to be completing a full startup without touching your mouse, even with the addition of the startup panel, it goes a long way to keeping you hands-on, but once up and running you'll seldom need anything else. Using the panels has added a great deal to flying the Hornet. Having quick access to switches during startup, taxi, combat and landing is pretty neat, saving you from having to look down in your cockpit to find them. Helping the immersion, and having those lights synchronise is always great. One oddity is the laser designator switch, which in the Hornet cockpit is electronically held and resets after lasing, whilst on the combat panel, well, this doesn't happen. Our switch is going to stay put. But fortunately it locks the in-game switch in position too. And speaking of switches, you're going to have to start pre-flight checking your panel before loading into the sim to avoid any unwanted control desynchronization. Whilst designed for the Hornet, you can repurpose the panels to other DCS modules fairly easily, and in most cases the lights, where appropriate, will also synchronize with the panels. Some accommodation has actually been made with the switches too. The mast arm is a free position switch, along with a few others which wouldn't normally be, making it easier to bind across multiple aircraft. So whilst it's focused on the Hornet, it is just about workable with other aircraft without having to get too creative. Despite its busy appearance, I've not found the panels to be too dense, and I have been able to find the switches by feel, making it okay for VR use. Although I'd have liked to have seen some more switch caps to match the cockpit to help you navigate blind. If you're looking for a compact way to extend your home cockpit, they're an excellent addition. Available for $150 each, they're fantastic value for the sheer range of functionality that you get. Although you will have to account for the addition of shipping and any import fees as they come direct from China. I think you'll be hard pressed to get so much functionality for the same price without going DIY. There's great alternative axes functions available in the software, and the light synchronization is the cherry on the top. Whilst you certainly do not need it to fly, they add a lot of fun and make the whole process far less dependent on frustrating mouse clicking controls. There are a couple minor ergonomic issues, and I'd recommend buying them as a pair, but overall I'm thoroughly enjoying using them. Be sure to check out the comments. If any long-term issues crop up, I will be adding a mention to them pinned below going forwards. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll leave you to the sound of switches.